Yeah.
So you want to sit outside?
Yeah, I just want to sit somewhere where it's quiet.
It's not quiet. That's the station. It's not.
Yeah, but you got to mute yourself.
I muted her again. She keeps unmuting herself, I think.
The other Deb,
All right, well, we'll go
out on the education subcommittee. If you let me know how little you want some help, but I'd be happy to do that. I can't do it myself. I'm sure of that.
Well, maybe we could get a co-chair and, you know, kind of share that a little bit. The nice thing about this part, Bill, is we'll have a facilitator, and so they become the, you know, the conduit for carrying out, you know, the think tank stuff in concert with the facilitator. So I have found that to be real helpful. Why don't we get the meeting started then, so that we can run an efficient meeting and be done at a reasonable time. I see Deb's here too, and Jennifer. I just want to hear, of course, Mary. Steve, welcome. All right, this is great. You want to do a roll call, Greg?
Are you calling the meeting to order?
I am calling to order at 6:35.
All right, very good. All right, so we'll do a roll call first. So let's see, Michelle.
Here.
Mike.
Mike Naughton, here.
Yeah. Alan.
Here.
Lynn. All right, got a wave. Renee.
Here.
Okay. Oh, I love Deb. Got Karen. Karen, you're muted.
We can see her.
I can see you.
Yeah.
All right.
Here.
Jane.
Yeah. Thank you.
Here.
Christy.
Here.
Thank you. Stephen.
I'm here.
Pat.
Here.
Jen. Bill.
Yes.
Deb Potee.
I'm here.
And Deb Loomer.
Can I just
You may speak. Yes.
Greg, can I just say one quick thing?
Sure.
I'm at a rehab center where stuff is, I might not stay connected, so I'm going to stay connected as long as I can, and
That's fine.
that's all. If I disappear, I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem.
All right, thank you.
I'll just keep letting you in.
For trying.
Okay, and then we have several guests.
Okay.
Which, Alan, do you want them to introduce themselves, or what would you like to do?
Well, we have Brian Beck, who's the superintendent of Gil Montague, with us, and we have Mary Broderick, who is was the facilitator.
Yeah.
And who is Dorina Bell Ups? Who's that?
She came to our meeting in Montague. She had a lot. She's
nice.
She's emailed us a few times and given us some really good questions and things to think about.
Is she from? Dorina, are you from Montague?
Yep, just a district parent.
Okay, so we're short one member from Warwick and one member from Montague. You have any interest in getting appointed by the moderator and joining us?
Maybe. I don't know.
All right, so why don't you and John, I don't know if John has, he has an interest as well. So that'd be great. So welcome everyone.
A quick point of order. I'd welcome new members, but are we limited? Aren't we supposed to have 3 members from each town?
Yes.
We are. So we need one more from Montague, and we
need one more
from Warwick.
I don't think we need one more from Montague. I think we just need one more from Warwick.
No.
Cassie Damkohler?
We have Cassie, Mike,
and Lynn.
And Lynn, yeah. There's 3.
Unless Cassie's no longer a member.
She wasn't able to attend tonight. She had other obligations.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do feel like, you know, if giving Dorinda and John an opportunity to give some thought to it that if we do need one more member, there is also the possibility that Cassie may have to drop out. She has a fairly busy upcoming schedule working on bargaining subcommittees. So just keeping that out there, that would give John and Dorinda an opportunity to take a little bit of time to think about it.
That would be great.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah,
definitely
thank you,
welcome
Brian.
new people, and would love to have someone who, has the time, which is clearly a challenge for most people.
Yeah.
I do have one issue to bring up relative to that too, which is, since we're all appointed by selectmen, do these need to be passed to the Board of Selectmen to have them appointed?
Moderator. They have to be appointed by the moderator.
Is that who it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
You're in control.
Yeah. No, I'm just clarifying. That's all. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So let me just make a quick announcement. Let me make a quick announcement that we are videotaping this, and it will be there'll be a link provided on our website, which will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel. So there's the boilerplate messaging. Alan, I turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. I just want to start by thanking, it's been a while, but a number of you were able to participate with Mary at the different forums that we had. And it was really nice to have you there and have that support, and in some cases introduce Mary. And in others, it was really helpful because people had follow-up questions. And it was really nice to be able to go to members of this group and, ask their questions. It was gave it a nice personal touch. So I want to thank you for that. And officially, Christy, thank you for joining us and being a part of this. We're excited to have you. So we had a couple of things.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Alan, sorry to interrupt, but since you mentioned people had questions, I know Dorinda had sent a question around afterwards. I just wanted to clarify whether that question got answered.
Okay, yeah. What question are we talking about?
My emails were answered. Yeah, thank you.
They were. Okay, thank you.
I tried.
I think it was about percentage of low-income students in Pioneer.
Yeah, that was one of them. I was just trying to be helpful and think of different benefits.
No, thank you. I saw the email saying, can anybody answer this? And I never saw anything further. So just didn't want it to get lost in the ozone.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
I think the last time I heard it was at 17%. Could be wrong.
Okay. So I would entertain a motion for approval of the November 2nd minutes that were nicely done.
I think Lynn.
Do people have an opportunity to read them?
Lynn put up her hand. Are you making a motion, Lynn? Sorry, you're muted.
She's muted.
Hold on. Yes.
Okay. Was there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Do we all appear the same on the screen, on everyone's screen? Like if you started, Greg, and we just went across?
No, we all appear differently. Okay. I'll do the roll call.
All right, go ahead, roll.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Michelle?
Yes.
Okay. Mike?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Renee?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Christy? You can abstain if you'd like.
I was going to abstain, please.
Yeah. Stephen?
Yes.
Pat? Even if you weren't there, Pat, you can still approve them.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Bill?
Yes.
Deb? Poti?
Yes.
Deb Loomer?
Yes.
Raina?
Yes.
Jen?
can't vote, but.
I know, but I still like you. I still like
I appreciate it. I would approve them.
I feel like you're a part of this group. I mean, I always have. So I'm
Thank
gonna,
you so much.
even if it's just a formality. Alan?
Yes.
And I wrote them, so I think I'm okay with them as long as you guys are.
All right, so those have been approved. We did have minutes that were from August 18th of the Education Subcommittee. Do you want to, someone, Deb, even though you're not the chair, do you want to have people vote on those so we get those out of the way?
Sure. I think I'm still the chair unless someone has taken the crown, and that would be great. But I don't think anybody has unless Bill has. That's fine, but
I haven't yet.
okay. So I think I'm still a chair, although I don't want to be. Just saying that. We can approve the minutes. Is that what you're asking? Our minutes, because we did a great job. So yes, let's vote to approve the minutes. Any thanks, Serena?
I got to.
Someone want to make a motion?
No, I have to. Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes, and then I have an amendment.
Yeah. A second?
I'll second.
The change is simple. It lists me as representing Montague. I don't represent Montague. I represent Gil Montague or the town of Gil. And that's the only change. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll make that correction.
All right.
Oh,
Roll
so
call?
I guess I'm going to do the roll call. Greg, you were so good at it. Okay. Just my team though, right? So
yes.
Raina?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Renee?
Yes.
Pat? I think Pat's on my committee.
Yes.
Awesome. Karen?
Yes.
You're testing my memory. I think that's it. Oh, did I miss somebody? Oh, Deb, my buddy Deb.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry.
Perfect. Unanimous.
Oh.
And how did you vote, Deb
Yes.
Pote?
Yes.
All right. So it's unanimous. Okay, super. And then Mike said there weren't any minutes that needed to be followed up here. So can we go back just for a minute in terms of the, Mike, did you have any comments, first of all, on the combined regional budget? The tool that we will be using at some point to plug in numbers and see how it works?
Well, sure, if you like, and other members of the subcommittee can chime in. We all got copies of it. We did receive the tool, and I guess my main comment is I don't want to oversell it. It may be very useful for us. It does combine Gil Montague and Pioneer Valley budgets into one combined budget, but it took a long time for the consultants to manage to do that. And it was a very manual process. And the upshot of that is that updating it for FY23 will likely, if anybody wants to attempt it, also take a long time and be a very manual process. The main reason being that the subcommittee working with the consultants decided the best way to go was to try to group everything under DESI and DOR budget codes. And neither budget lent itself very easily to that. Both mostly did, but had difficulties. And that's what took the time, is resolving all those little things. So we have a budget for a combined budget for FY22, but as I say, unless someone wants to put in the time and effort, we won't be able to have a combined budget for FY23. It does offer the ability to play out different scenarios, but what that means is we have a list of teachers with specialties, and if you add or subtract from that list, the budget will adjust itself accordingly. And we do have a Pioneer Valley salary schedule and a Gilmontague salary schedule and a suggested combined salary schedule. Each teacher is assigned at this point either to Gilmontague or Pioneer. They could all be reassigned to the combined one. That would have to be done somehow by somebody. There are over, I think, around 200 teachers to do. I think it could probably be done with a macro, but I haven't gone ahead and done that. And if you want to add people, you add them manually and assign them whatever code you want to put them in the salary schedule. One of our visions was that we would get specs for what would actually take the staffing that would actually be required to run a combined district, offering what is currently offered at the two districts, which we thought would show us what excess capacity we might have in the teaching area, on the assumption that you wouldn't need the same number of teachers that are now in both districts to offer the same things in a combined district. So you'd have, you'd be able to do more with the existing staff. And we were hoping we could get an answer to what that is. But we never got specs for what it would take to run a combined district. The closest we got was a very rough sketch of what a combined central office might look like, that I personally was unable to really map to the existing central offices to figure out, well, what is that in terms of who gets to stay, are there positions that, I mean, we know that we only need one superintendent, that's easy, but there were various other positions that it was unclear how, I think it was made up by Mars, that particular suggestion. And some of the job titles they had didn't match job titles in either district. And in terms of how many you would really need, versus how many we have now, if you can't match up to the people, you don't really know. So in that sense, we would need something from someone in order to use the tools to do that type of thing. We need more data from someone because we don't have it right now. And
all right, thank you.
I think that's about it. That's about where we are. I could add one thing. One thing that the tool does do, which I think would probably be useful, is we can try different scenarios for figuring out town assessments based on different assumptions as to what those assessments would be based on. And we could do that for FY22, I think, fairly reliably. And I'd actually was thinking that I would go ahead and try to do that. I need some help from somebody in the Pioneer District to understand how Pioneer figures its assessment. I looked back through what we received and I did not find anything that really told me how the FY22 assessments for the various towns were figured. And when I looked in the district agreement, which is on the website, the section about how district assessments are figured it says basically they're figured by percentage of students from each town. And there's a handwritten note saying this was superseded by the Ed Reform Act of 1993, which I believe, but I didn't see any indication of what the method is now. So if someone from
we can talk some, yeah, we can talk some more about that. That's, they use the 5-year rolling average in the foundation. Right. So yeah, so yeah, I want to thank first of all
outside of this meeting, I would appreciate it. So
yeah, so I want to thank you, Mike, I want to thank you and the team for your stick-to-itness. I know that was a long process and went several months over the December cutoff in order to get the information. So kudos to all of you for staying there and working with Matt and Mark on that. So one of the things, just an editorial comment is I'm not always comfortable with the consultants, kind of listening and coming up with, what they think, what they're hearing and what might be the kinds of courses and things, that we would populate a staffing. And I can envision and would hope that we'd be able to actually make opportunities to bring the staffs together from both districts, either by department or whatever, and have them talk about what they envision as a group, as to being courses that they can't offer, or they would have liked to have offered, or there's not enough people, they don't have enough kids to offer them, and really kind of reimagine what they might be able to do collectively. And it'd be best if it came from the staff and sharing their ideas. So I'll just mention that in passing, because I see that as one of the next steps to get that kind of information from the staff of both schools, maybe working together. And Mike, while you're sort of still the chair in a way, is there anyone that was willing to help out, and then maybe we could figure out co-chairs if you think it's too much? Because one of the nice things about that is you'll be working with consultant, even going through the the next phases. We're looking at financial things. I still envision working with a consultant in some capacity. So we have some new members and we have some existing members. Did anyone have an interest in Jane? When we started the meeting, appealed to, she'd really like someone to sort of join that group. And you can shoot me an email, Greg.
No, I don't have an interest, but I do. I do have a question.
Oh, come on, Greg.
I do have a question for Mike. Hey, Mike, looking through the spreadsheets, the only thing that it struck me was that there's not sort of a top level that compiles some of the, sort of an aerial view the way Chapter 70 does, which is really helpful when you have that sort of top view. You know what I'm talking about? And we don't really have that. We've got a group of sheets, and it would be nice if we had like a top level that, gave when you made some sort of overall changes, you could see the changes sort of at the revenues level, the foundation enrollment level on one sheet. That sort of gave you sort of those outputs. Similar to, I know you know what I'm talking about in terms of the Chapter 70. I'm just surprised that, we don't have a time. It might be easy to set up, to just set up one more sheet and have those plugged in so that we have sort of a top level, but I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I agree that would be nice, and I agree that we don't have it. And I say, go for it, Greg.
That's why I'm not on the finance.
Because that's where we are right now.
No, I know.
We want more stuff. We can. Yeah. The tool is there. We can do whatever we want to.
All right. Well, I'll see.
I say that partly just, but it took long enough to get what we got. Yes, I agree. It would be nice to have that top level.
Yeah.
It was a struggle. I believe we now have one sheet that shows Pioneer all in one tab, because it used to be 16 tabs, and that took a while. So the whole process was very time consuming and laborious, and there are a number of things that would be nice to have that we don't have.
I feel for you, Mike.
I'll leave it at that.
All right, thanks.
All right, I'll go to the next one in terms of Deb. Just an opportunity, even though you are the chair still. Do you have any comments you want to make before we start moving into Mary's presentation? And do you want to entertain any motions or nominations for the chair, or any suggestions from folks?
Right.
Was it Bill that said?
Bill said he'd be interested. I have a strong team, you guys. it'd be great because weary is that, or heavy is the head that wears the crown. And I'd love to pass it off to somebody else.
Bill, are you okay with that?
Sure.
Bill said sure.
Yeah.
I did say that.
It was recorded, Deb. Sorry.
Awesome. Yay, Bill. All right.
I think he said he wanted to hear what would be involved.
I'd like to nominate Bill to be the chair of the Ed Subcommittee. Any seconds?
Hi, Dad. Take your advice and look for work as a geothermal consultant. Great.
I will second that.
Thank you, Karen. Keeping me hanging. Okay. So we all want to take a vote. That we will have Bill be the chair person. Yeah.
You should do that.
Okay. All right. So I'll do the roll call for my people to vote for Bill. Renee.
Yes.
Raina.
Yes.
Karen.
You betcha.
Deb Loomer.
Yeah.
Still there?
She said yes.
Yes.
Did Deb say yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, I missed it. Pat?
She looks frozen.
Yeah, I think she's
Pat,
frozen.
give us a thumbs up, Pat, too. You want to give us a thumbs up?
Oh, no, there she is.
I will, but of course.
Okay, great. And Steve?
Yep, that's good.
Yes, awesome. I probably missed somebody.
Yeah.
Did I miss somebody?
Loomer?
No.
Oh, no, I think I said Deb. We got Deb.
Jen?
Yeah.
Jen,
Okay.
Jen still on our
And I say yes.
And I abstain.
You're voting for yourself. That's great. Okay. All right. I want to thank my team for being so kind to me and patient with me. And I will promise to be a good follower, Bill. So thank you very much. And especially thank you, Raina, for being my buddy on this. You've been excellent. And you should also feel free to find a replacement if you feel the need, because you've served for a long time.
No, that's not allowed.
He's going to be tougher than I am. Okay, I'm stepping back. Thank you very much, Bill.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Yep, that's awesome. So public relations is David and I and Ray, and we tried to get articles in the paper. We had some pretty good coverage. We'll write something for the town reports, and we'll continue to follow and promote the forums going forward. So once we look at the next steps, we'll then actively get that information out in various forms. So I'm going to keep mine short. Greg, anything to add? Okay, that's a no. Okay, so Mary has really took the bull by the horns, and she had a really good persona in terms of meeting with different groups, whether they be very small or a little bit bigger. She did a pretty substantial survey for first coming out. I think one of the things is a lot of people didn't really have any idea what this was all about. And so I think one of the things we learned is that as we go to the next phase, we need to now, have more education about what we've learned, and as we share what we heard from everyone and give the feedback from that. So Mary, do you want to have it, Greg, that you give her the ability to share? She did a PowerPoint presentation. She wanted to get your feedback on. You all set?
Yep, I have it. Thank you. Let me just begin by saying what a pleasure it was to work with all of you in your beautiful communities. And I feel like we threaded the needle in terms of the timing, because we got all the forums done before Omicron. which was that people were still a little bit comfortable coming out. So I feel like we are fortunate with that. I think you've all had the opportunity to see the report. I'm going to go through a PowerPoint which covers the gist of the report, but if you find either I'm moving too quickly or too slowly, please shout, since I will be showing it this way. Now, let me do the slideshow from the start. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you don't need the background, but your audience might. Obviously, you've been experiencing declining enrollments for 2 decades in both communities, both regional districts. You were formed in 2019, and there are just some details about that you have studied the educational and the financial ramifications of a merger, and that you were seeking input from the 6 communities to have a sampling of the perspectives of the many constituents who make up your regions, and helping hear them about what other data they think is important. I know you were just talking about some of the data that they also mentioned. And then the purpose of this was also to make sure that the recommendation that you end up making is as well informed as possible, given your varied community perspectives. So we offered 21 community forums, and you can see the breakdown by community of that participation. And that was also in the report. And then the survey. Now you'll see at the top of, let's see can you see my cursor here? Yeah. The 276 is the total number of survey responses, but they come up at 311 because some people noted a couple of different roles that they play. So you see how that breaks down. So what did we learn from the survey? In terms of education, they're starting with the education questions. 162 or 60% felt that their districts were doing well or very well in providing high quality comprehensive education. I don't know if that's a surprise to you. And then an additional 30% felt the education was adequate, and 9% felt that they were not doing well. Hang on, just
whoop.
I'm going the wrong way. There we go. All right. With 1.5% feeling the performance was poor. In terms of the range of curricular opportunities, 50% thought you're doing pretty well, right down the middle, either well, very well, or well. And then 14% felt less than adequate, with let's see, 36% saying adequate. In terms of the range of extracurricular opportunities, you'll see again, you've got 50% saying doing well or very well, 29% saying adequate, 20% felt that they were less than adequate. Other educational opportunities, 36% thought you were doing well or very well, 39% thought adequate, and 26% felt less than adequate. So doing a little less well with that. In terms of finance, 71% thought you were very well or well-funded, or adequately. That one includes adequately, and 29% felt not well or poorly funded. In terms of your facilities, the state of the elementary facilities, 25% felt the elementary buildings were in excellent shape. 126 or 47% thought they were adequate, and 28% thought they were in need of work. Probably depended on which community you lived in, right? In terms of the middle and high school facilities, 31% thought the middle school and high school in their town was in excellent shape. 62% thought adequate, and 7% thought in need of work. And there were comments about the need for attention to general maintenance and some very specific things, technology, sports fields, custodial staffing. So in terms of the findings, the more qualitative findings, the comments on the survey and at the forums, I'm going to run quickly through the areas that are listed at the bottom here just to give you some highlights. In terms of staff, that was listed by far as the greatest strength by 65 participants who felt that the staff were dedicated, kind, compassionate, knowledgeable, and built relationships with and served as mentors to students. The program was cited by 53 of the participants as a strength. 19 of those 53 talked about some aspect of the academic program, talking about a history of excellence and academic quality. In spite of the sizes of the districts offering a variety of classes and a diverse learning curriculum. 30 talked about a wide range of extra and co-curricular offerings. 13 specifically mentioned clubs, performing arts, after-school activities, and 17 cited sports opportunities. In terms of size, 32 people thought size being small was a major strength, a caring community, allowing for close relationships between students and staff, allowing more focus on individuals and their needs. And then 11 of those 32 specifically mentioned class sizes. Students were mentioned by 19 participants as a great strength, and the diversity of the students, respectful student body, everyone accepted, a lot of academically and athletically excelling students, and open to a diverse range of students. In terms of community and school pride, there were 17 participants who talked about a community spirit and sense of pride, local passion for quality education. Facilities and environment, there were 16. Obviously, these are in descending order of most mentioned. The facilities, the new building, the excellent sports fields, the safe environment. And obviously that did depend on what community you were from. So moving on to challenges. Program comes up again, but for different reasons. Even though 53 participants mentioned some aspect of the program as a strength, there were 82 who mentioned it as a challenge. The academic, co and extracurricular offerings as a weakness of the districts. 40 found shortcomings in the overall program, the lack of innovative or consistent curriculum, the lack of high expectations and rigorous academic offerings, the failure to prepare students for the future. There were 9 who talked about the high percentage of students needing special services and academic help. And they felt that these shortcomings, one person worded it as leaving no specific draw for young families to move to the communities, and felt that the district should be working toward quality now and not waiting for a merge to happen. 24 of the 82 participants who cited challenges found the challenge in the limits resulting from the size. Little scheduling latitude, few options for classes, lack of sufficient offerings and advanced placement, the lack of vocational training or technology-based learning opportunities. 27 participants among those 82 talked about the lack of co or extracurricular offerings, the lack of quality art and music instruction, the lack of sports opportunities, and insufficient funding for and equipment for sports. In terms of funding, funding and facilities, or sort of finance and facilities, there were 36 who thought that was the greatest challenge. 27 talked about being underfunded with not enough support from taxpayers. Some of you might disagree with that. And then resource constraints, leading to reduced educational opportunities. 9 talked about facilities needs, out-of-date elementary schools, lack of air conditioning, lack of, or a quote, sport equipment from medieval times. Next was staffing. Even though that was obviously the #1 strength, there were 34 people who talked about some aspect of staffing as a challenge, feeling especially, and I think COVID really influenced some of it. 23 of those 34 said staffing is insufficient, especially at the middle and high school levels. Also mentioned were low salaries and shortages, skeletal staff, leading to a subpar experience for teachers and students. In the 4 content, the middle school concept is hard to deliver with just 4 content area teachers. 10 at the middle school level. 10 participants talked about staff being undertrained and not able to support student learning and also mental health issues. In terms of enrollment and school choice, 32 participants cited that as the greatest challenge. Low population in towns and schools, I think you all know that. 17 identified choicing out to other districts or to Franklin County Tech as an issue. People spoke about the lack of innovative out-of-the-box thinking with regards to retaining students in the district and the need for a focus on retention and recruitment. One said, the draw of tech is it's stable. You know what to expect. You're not guessing if the bottom is going to fall out. So there is a real sense of the instability right now in the 2 systems. Leadership and communication, there were 30 study participants who mentioned that area. Administration and communication, the turnover, the lack of effectiveness, leaving schools, the districts rudderless. 10 talked about communications being issues between the school district and the district and the families. A tendency to make decisions without major stakeholders being heard and insufficient efforts to promote the program that the district is offering. And finally, under challenges was the diversity, culture, and behavior. There were 15 participants who mentioned this area. The lack of diversity in the schools is what some people spoke about, and others thought the diversity of the student body had been a problem because groups with differing viewpoints hadn't managed to interact positively. And some mentioned bullying and making fun of one another. So what do people wish for? You had a lot of questions that actually ended up raising the same issues multiple times. And there were some broad areas under what people were looking for that I don't think I'm going to go through, and unless it would be helpful for you to hear all of those there in the report, but generally they want expanded course offerings and richness in programs, advanced placement honors, dual enrollment classes with Greenfield Community College, gifted and talented services, environmental science and green learning themed in high school. I think there are some great ideas here, but there wasn't a specific, they want to grow global language programs, computer and nature programs. This is fodder for you to consider going forward, many of these ideas. Expanding extracurricular programs, attracting and retaining excellent leadership with passion, vision, and courage, who are going to make some strategic changes for you. Attracting and retaining the finest staff, students, and families, and guiding school committees to be effective governance teams. In terms of communications and public relations, getting more people involved in what's going on. You're right, Alan, there is a sense that there are a number of people who responded to the survey who did have the sense that things are happening without them and they want to know more about what's going on. In terms of finance, support and fund more educational and sports opportunities. And there were comments about the state system not scaling down to districts the size of the two districts. Upgrading and making capital improvements to buildings, for facilities, consolidating grade schools was mentioned. I wanted to include it all here so people saw themselves reflected here and knew that you were aware of their different suggestions. They want the communities to be proactive about keeping local families from choicing out, attracting students to come to the district, expanding housing for more families to move into the districts. There's one suggestion of lobbying to ban school choice. And in terms of culture and diversity, cultivate a vibrant community where administrators, teachers, parents, and students support one another. Instill and maintain school pride and the joy of lifelong learning. They want staff to be provided training and professional development, what it means to be anti-racist and inclusive, able to teach all learning styles, adequately compensated. And in terms of the in terms of your proposal, the specific responses, there were 17 participants who said improve and sustain, but don't merge. There were 2 who said merge, and there were 3 who said merge with Franklin County Tech. A couple suggested making more vocational, making the academic part of the students' day in the 2 school districts and having the voc part be at Franklin Tech. So kind of dividing the students' experience. So in terms of what participants thought about the study to date, sorry, I think I just went through much of that. Yeah, so they want to see 63 participants want well-rounded opportunities so that students are excited to go to the schools. They want a variety and rigor of classes, stronger music, arts, technology, culinary, computer programming, woodworking, and more crossover with Greenfield Community College and more global language options. They want the community more engaged through music, theater, and volunteer programs so that community is in the schools, and broader choices in life skills. They want the programs that are currently drawing the kids to tech. Also, early care and before and after care would keep people from choosing other options when their children are very young. Expanded sports clubs, and there were 60 who want more robust and varied sports and clubs. There were 9 who talked about wanting to see an enhanced community spirit as a benefit. They see that as a potential benefit of a merger. They thought there were students who talked about making more friends and enjoying more diversity in classrooms. And there were 6 who cited the support for staff, excuse me, as being a benefit of a merger. Others talked perceived benefits. 82 thought the merger would mean more students accessing a richer array of relevant courses. This is going to sound very redundant because the questions got at some redundant things. Am I going too slowly or are we doing okay? Oh, keep going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
The merger would mean more students accessing a richer array of relevant courses. There's 82 said that, and more flexible schedule. More students would also mean more access to co and extracurricular options and a wider range of sports. Extracurricular offerings likely would be stronger with improved participation, which would help with school morale and community spirit. Financial benefits and economies of scale, there were 39 who acknowledged that the merger, well, you know, they hadn't seen the presentation necessarily, so they thought there would be more financial stability and economies of scale, but certainly savings are anticipated in administration and district oversight. 26 cited cultural advantages with the larger pool of friends and socioeconomic groups to mingle. 14 talked about staff growth and that benefit that teachers would feel stretched. They are now feeling stretched and isolated, and this might attract better administrator and teacher talent who hold high expectations and can deploy a variety of teaching methods, allowing the districts to become more competitive. 12 cited the large talent pool in students and the potential for more friends as a benefit with enrollment. And in terms of leadership, 7 said there'd be a better opportunity to rethink and adjust the way we organize staff and maintain our schools with streamlined costs. And they thought a broader school committee to represent 6 towns would be a good thing. Other comments were that it would be a fresh start, sustainability into the 21st century. And finally, there were 18 who specifically said that they were not fond of this idea. They want you to stop this work right away and seek alternative choice options that they would seek other options if the merger were to take place. The challenges of a merger, there were 61, surprise, surprise, who named transportation as a potential concern with the vast geographic area covered by the towns and the logistical challenge. They saw that as potential logistical nightmare for parents and families. There were 39 who said that they saw a challenge with culture and diversity, with different philosophies, the varied socioeconomic populations, questioning the compatibility of the 6 towns collectively governing a single district. There's a concern that a bigger district with greater demographic differences would be that much more unwieldy to govern. And they expressed concern about merging identities given the rivalry and cultural and philosophical differences and the potential loss of a spirit of tradition and pride and community. In terms of school and class sizes, there were 28 who thought class sizes were going to be larger and the schools were going to be overcrowded. There are 28 who sort of identified with a public mistrust of institutions as they get larger and the continuing and accelerating political and cultural divides in our society. There's resistance to change that they acknowledge, resistance to losing control over the local purse strings and the education offered. They feared student and parent voices being overshadowed due to the size of the area and want to keep the feel of a close community. And they cited the mascot issue as a huge change that was very disruptive. In terms of finance and facilities, 16 thought that the fiscal scenario is not good either as separate or joined. They may have attended your sessions and heard the fiscal issues. There were 10 who feared that staff would lose positions and that also the total cost of staff would rise with the merger. There were 9 who cited the structure of the district's new leadership, the size and decision-making process of a new school committee would be unwieldy, and again, feared losing local voice and control in governance. And then there were 10 who cited enrollment. The district would go through a potentially complex and disruptive process only to see enrollments decline further. And that the fear that more students would choice out. 2 commented in favor, noting that the challenge is on the front end and we've got to get people to believe that they're going to benefit from the changes. And then 13 expressed views against the merger. Merging will not solve the root problem of attracting students to stay in the district. So asked about what other additional information was needed. they're listed here. There were 23, and again, they're listed in order of most mentioned. So 23 talked about cost benefit analysis. Again, many of them may not have seen the work that you've done to date on that, but they want to know the long-term implications of such a move. What impact, as Mike was saying earlier, what's the impact on assessments going to be? And will you be able to use the modeling tool to consider changes in union contracts? You're very much aware of all of that. 10 talked about the plan. They want to see the plan to attract what's going to draw families, what curricular, what co-curricular, and what extracurricular offerings will there be. 10 want to see questions about facilities raised. They weren't at your sessions. They want to know where the middle schoolers are going to go and where the high school kids are going to go. So they didn't have those questions answered because they just asked the question through the survey. They want to know your process in keeping the community informed going forward. They want an analysis of staffing, as you've discussed. They want to know your timeline. There are a lot of questions about the timeline. And again, these are, I try to answer the questions I knew the answers to in this list so that anybody going to the study will see the answers there. In terms of the leadership structure, they want to know more specifics about what that's going to look like. The school committee design, the voting process, the organizational design, changing administrative practices given the lower enrollment. They want to know student discipline and truancy analysis from the 2 districts. They want to know what models you're looking at that have had such regional arrangements, what happened in Berkshire, for instance. They want to know of any models where shrinking enrollment has led to changing or improved educational practice. They want to know what Franklin Tech is doing to attract students and families. I know you've done the analysis of bus ridership, but they asked about that. They plan to meet the needs of high needs students. And then these are probably not many, the rest of them are probably not many people asking. But one of the big ones was the feasibility of having Franklin Tech only teach vocational studies while keeping students in their home district. And then also to assess the interest of Vernon, Vermont, because they've been tuitioning their students to Pioneer Valley. And then finally, those comments, did I get to comment? Yeah, so they want you to keep students as your #1 priority as you do this work. They want you to recognize the financial challenges of rural districts. They want you to think sustainability. How long do we anticipate that the merged schools would remain open? And this was an important consideration for them. How long will the benefits of the merger last and build a dynamic system that continue to adapt in the future? It needs to be a jewel. Spend the money and people will come, they said. Elementary oversight, they're concerned about that. They're concerned about what happened with Warwick and who's calling the shots on their elementary schools and how is that working. They suggested considering limiting the merger to central office, the district office only, or at least start there like the business function. Could Franklin Tech and Pioneer combine transportation? What would it mean for Warwick's plan to leave Pioneer Valley? And why do you expect efficiencies from central office? So next steps that were ideas that were generated by your participants are to publicize events and forums, attending school gatherings and publicizing through students' backpacks, and asking superintendents to send a mass email to inform the communities about upcoming events, engage through newspaper articles and online newspapers, attend faculty meetings to engage staff and gather insights, survey parents and students asking, would you attend a combined district? Engage sixth graders as a part of a social studies project to go home and ask and talk with their parents about it. Ask students why they might want to attend school elsewhere. Tap the networks of family engagement coordinator. That's an individual at Gil Montague who would love to be active that way. And make those personal connections with PTOs. I know you're working to ensure your transparency and your decisions and advertise meetings and so on, and keep sharing your process and your insights. And there were 14 who actually wanted to thank you for the work that you've been doing. And let me just stop the share here. So that was a lot to listen to, and you didn't interrupt me at all. I don't know if you have questions about that to start. It was an awful lot to absorb.
So the idea, Mary, is this would be a document that would be used by the facilitator as a source, one of the source documents to bring information out. If there are perceptions that may have been reached by, lack of more knowledge about it, it's an opportunity to provide more background in those areas. I guess I would ask the committee for the planning board for feedback on, are there any format changes or changes in the presentation, or how comfortable do you feel for this document hitting the mark? And we said that the next step would be to bring this information out and share it. So, what's your reaction to the actual, the PowerPoint? And of course, there's the, I don't know, I guess everyone got the full report with all the comments that Mary was reading. So comments around, well, how do you feel about this document being one of the source documents and sharing back to the community? Or other comments? Mike? Mary, why don't you, can you see everyone? Mary, why don't you feel free on calling on people and
sure,
kind of coordinating this? Yep.
Mike, yeah.
Well, sure, I'll start because I had a chance to look over the documents that we received earlier, which basically had the same material. And I have a couple of general reactions, one of which is I think Mary did a great job of collecting a bunch of opinions. I was able to attend a couple of the forums, one for town officials in Montague and one for the school committee for Gil Montague. And I knew most of the people who, at least the people who talked. So one reaction I have is that there are a number of different opinions, and as Mary pointed out, some of them are more informed than others. Mm-hmm. The finances of the districts is a good example where some people really don't have much of a clue about what merger might do for the financial situation. And it does cause me to wonder when people, for example, I took the survey as well. And when I got to the question of what do you think of the condition of the elementary schools, I didn't grow up in Montague. I haven't spent any time at all in any of the elementary schools in Pioneer Valley. So my opinion on that is, I think I put down, I thought they were fine, but so what? What do I know? I don't know anything. So that opinion is kind of worthless. And one difficulty with this approach, which is not Mary's fault, is that just collecting a bunch of opinions from a bunch of people, some of them know what they're talking about and some of them don't. So that's one thing. On the other hand, it struck me that if we were starting this process and saying, should we think about considering a merger between the two districts, if we want to take these responses seriously, there seemed to be a solid majority of people saying we basically like what we have. If anything, we ought to improve what we have. And we don't particularly like the idea, although there might be some nice things coming from a merger. They're kind of iffy when people talk about, well, we could have more programs and we could have better scheduling. We have no data showing that that would actually happen. And in fact, we know that even merging the districts would still be a small district. So how much the scheduling of classes would improve, I think, is a very big question. And in a couple of areas where people were directly asked, a big majority, it was like 18-2, I think was one example, where 18 people said don't merge and 2 people said yes, go ahead and merge. So I'm not getting a sense that the community at this point is saying, yeah, let's figure out how to make this work. I'm getting the opposite sense, that they're kind of saying, why? You know, things are going okay, and we ought to improve it, and that's where we should go. So, so that leaves me wondering. I feel that our process has a certain momentum, where we're going along because we're going along. This is what we're doing. And Alan, now you're talking about saying, well, okay, now we have to go out and bring our findings, you know, publicize them more broadly. I don't see us as having a whole lot of findings that are different from what I could make up if I were asked a question of what would be the consequences of merging any 2 districts. What would happen if Frontier and Amherst Pelham were to merge? Well, gee, you'd have more kids, so you might be able to offer more programs. But transportation might be an issue. Finances, I don't know, kind of iffy. You know, what do we have that tells us specifically Gilmontague and Pioneer, this is what, you know, specifically is the case with trying to combine these 2 districts? I don't think we have a whole lot. I don't think we might be able to come up with more, but I don't think we're in a position now to go out and share much of anything with a wider public, because the other impression I get from these surveys is people say, well, you know, what's going to happen with the finances? Well, we don't really have an answer for that right now. We'd like a bunch of more courses. Well, do we know what more courses could realistically be offered and what the financial implications would be? No, maybe we could figure it out. We probably could figure it out, but we haven't figured it out. So we're not ready to go out and share that information. I'll stop, but I guess that's my impression. So I'll put that out there.
Thanks, Mike. Brian. And then Karen.
So just very quickly, Mary, I wanted to thank you for what was a really comprehensive undertaking and report on your part, and really thoughtful, and I think gives us really good information as a group to consider, because obviously the process is not quite in its infancy, but I wouldn't go so far as to say that, you know, we're even doing potty training right now, so to speak, if we were using raising kids. So part of the reason is we have a relatively small sample size, right? But from that sample size, we got a lot of really valuable input. So the first point that I have is I think we need to find a way to have more engagement with both communities to get larger sample size of input. The second, or actually the third item that I would add is that if in this process we can target barriers that can be removed, and I think of one right off the bat, if the state really has an incentive for our districts to consider regionalization, I would hope that part of that investigation and going through the financial tools would result in us having a really clear picture of how we could stabilize the finances for a set period of time with support from the state, because they seem to have a vested interest in us getting together. And if that breaks down at least the financial barrier, you know, then we're into educational opportunities and climate or cultural issues that might exist in the districts. So those are just a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share. You know, that if we're able to identify the financial thresholds that would allow us to be able to effectively make a transition, to be able to proactively involve the unions to say, listen, we're not going to reduce any staff for this period of time because the state is going to allow us this period of time to make this transition, that they're not going to force us into these efficiencies, and that we can effectively make reductions through things like retirement and other forms of attrition over time, then we remove another barrier of potential resistance from the unions. So, you know, I would just look at, I would want to be able to look at what some of those key barriers are, and then be able to work our way toward families. So thank you for letting me think out loud. And Mary, thank you so much for what was a really comprehensive study.
Thank you, Brian. Karen, so you next.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, as the others have, for all the time and expertise you have invested in this. And it was a pleasure to introduce you at your very first forum. I just have a quick question. And that is, do we know what % of surveys were returned? Or have we don't really know how many got out there to begin with?
No way to know, because people just spread the word, and it's just who clicked the link and came to the site. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that Michelle? Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Hi, Mary. It was a pleasure meeting you in person, and thank you for all this. I have a couple comments to make. I think we need to look at how we were formed and why, and go back to how this came about. And I think the community at large does not understand the future and what we're talking about as sustainability. And you might think it's all financial that I'm referring to, but it really is not. It is sustainability in the courses that we can offer our children going forward, and the educational experience that we want to give. We have to think about the future. We should not be looking back at what we have done or the mistakes that have been made, but we need to be positive and look towards goals. So I think this was a great opportunity for people who wanted to let their opinions be heard. But I think we need to expand upon that. Maybe we have not been out there in the newspapers and, you know, out talking to parents. Maybe we should get more students involved in this and ask them what they would like to see. But I think it's a great beginning. And I think we have learned a lot from this, but I think we just need to think about why we are all sitting here and putting all our time into this. And I think, you know, Brian had a lot of positive things to say, and I agree with him too. So I don't know where we go from here with other surveys, but I think maybe having another survey within another year might be a good thing to do also.
And the people who did come to the forums, I think, heard the reason why you're doing this work. And I don't think the people who took the survey understood that at all, who just did the survey. Yeah.
So this seems to sort of redirect us a little bit to going out of order on the agenda and talk about some of the potential next steps, because some people are saying that. When I heard Brian say about, engaging more, and we heard about, well, it's people's opinion or their perspective. Maybe it's for whatever reason. I'll leave it like that. So Mary and I talked for a little bit about, well, how do we have people engaged? Someone mentioned the students. You'll see further down that, is there a way that the student councils could take a leadership role and talking to other students of possibilities. Mary, I'm gonna just put this over to you for a minute, because a lot of these ideas, came as we were brainstorming and you were floating different things. And I really liked your particularly the idea around training parents and engaging parents, giving them the information, having them understand it, and having them go out in the community and talk to people and getting feedback. So if everyone, if no one disagrees, I'd like to jump down to how we might proceed in next steps and have you share some of those ideas, and maybe other members at that point could jump in and also share ideas of what you see as the next step. We did promise in our facilitation that we would share the feedback, and that they wouldn't just participate and give their opinion and then they wouldn't hear the results. So it's in some way we need to think about how doing that. So Mary, would you mind jumping down a little further and talk about what you see as potentially some next steps?
Sure. I mean, what came to mind for me is some work that I did in a past life in Connecticut. And we had something called Community Conversations About Education. And we would we had grant money, and we would invite communities to come up with an educational issue that they wanted to discuss. We would train the community, a group of 20 people or so, to host a community conversation. And the idea is you get as many varied perspectives, people from all kinds of backgrounds together. You frame the issue, pointing out pros, cons, what is the problem and what are some different ways of looking at this problem. And then you throw it open and have a conversation. And we would train people to facilitate that conversation and record the conversation. And I actually really think that you're getting I would love to see the Turners Falls kids and the Pioneer Valley kids have a conversation together that they lead. I just could really see that kind of a model benefiting. And the beauty, I am actually doing a superintendent search right now in a district in Connecticut that used this model 10 years ago, and they're still having community conversations about their hot educational issues. They took it seriously enough. So it is something that stays in the community, that people are trained to do these conversations. And given all of the different dimensions of this issue, I could see you bringing this out to your stakeholders and having them involved in this conversation. But that's just one of a bunch of ideas that the next steps listed, the ones that your community members had suggested. But that would be a more structured model. You've got the issue framed, which is usually the big step for a district. I don't know how people feel about that kind of thing. Does it sound like too much work?
Well, my concern is that this survey represents such a small number of the two districts that makes the results skewed. I would, for instance, the survey people did not seem to be aware that that was really there until it was too late to fill it out. And then there were people who said to me, I don't do stuff like that on my computer, or I don't use a computer, only for email. So you have that whole population that wouldn't have participated in the survey at all. I'd like to see us do a similar survey, or but publicize it in hard copy, shall I say, as well as on the internet. If you want to go on your computer and fill it out, you can, but here's a hard copy that you can mail back in or drop off at the town hall or whatever. Those were some comments I heard about the survey. The other comment I heard, and I really could not believe it, but I heard it. I didn't know about that. Where did you post it? Where did you announce it? So, you know, my first response was, well, it was in the recorder. I don't buy the paper. So that's another big challenge. How do you communicate to people?
Mm-hmm.
You know, parent-teacher organizations, will the schools send it home? I don't think we can ask the schools to do that. They're busy enough. Anyway, I think it's too limited.
Thanks, Jane.
And when we publicize it, we need to let people know that it was what? It isn't even 10% of the population. What is it? 1%?
Yeah. Thank you, Pat, and then Karen.
Can I chime in? Just only because I've had my hand up for like at least 15 minutes.
I am so sorry. Yeah.
No, I think the order would be me, and then I think Jen, and then Karen, and then Pat. I've been keeping an eye on who's raising their hands.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, your hand is in front of your curtain, Greg.
I always feel like I get left out. I don't know why. My hand, the little hand up there, is not.
You're in the top left corner, and your hand has a window behind it. So.
Okay, here, I'll lower it now. But no, I just wanted to say I agree with Jane in that I think it's too small of a sample. I think the you know, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, so outreach is very limited. You know, getting people together is limited. I also think, you know, there's sort of a rule of thumb that if your surveys and your outreach only, you know, brings in about less than, I think it's 25%, that it's okay to look at the information, but it really doesn't tell you much about what the community's really thinking. Because you just don't have a big enough size, feedback. And then the other thing was, to Mike's point, I heard the survey and the feedback very differently. I heard, I sort of sense that people are fearful of merging, and that's understandable. I also think their wish list was sort of in line with what you would get from a merger, but not really in line with what the districts are, and especially Pioneer, what they're facing. I mean, a lot of the wish lists are wonderful things, but I think realistically, they're a pretty heavy lift for these districts. As far as the merging Franklin Tech, that's I don't think that's even a possibility. No. It's 19 towns. It's not something you can just merge. There's possibilities to share services. But I think that's as far as it's going to go. So those are my takeaways. That it's not necessarily a given. That the sample size was too small, and I just want to know more. I want to be able to get more information from the public, and it's really hard right now. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank
you. I would also just like to echo what Greg said as far as the pandemic. I think that we didn't get a big enough sample because people might have been fearful to actually go places. I know some were virtual, but maybe even gathering people outside during the springtime and doing another survey. I also wonder, I don't think it would be terrible to ask the schools to administer these surveys like in homeroom. I know that when I was a teacher, there was many surveys that were given out, and there's time to be able to do it. Just another possibility. And even if we wanted to connect with the community, just having actually paper copies and standing outside grocery stores like Food City and Turner's and other locations, maybe in Bernston and Northfield. Just some thoughts.
Thank you, Jen. I have to say that if you're going to do another survey, don't make it so long and don't make it so many. There were quite a few questions that were redundant. So as the person who was taking all the responses and the comments and trying to analyze them, I think we could be tighter, right?
Yep.
Jen, Pat, I'm sorry, was somebody else saying something? Okay, Pat?
Now I can't remember what I said. Oh, I know what it was. We all have town meetings this spring. Would that be a time that you could give out some kind of a survey and ask them to mail them in or to drop them off at a central place within the post office or something like that? I don't know, just an idea of where we get people together. And those might be people that would normally pass in such a thing as a survey.
Great. Thank you, Pat. Yes, Karen, and then Ellen.
As far as reaching people to educate them more about why we are doing this and what we have found so far, I wondered if you would consider or think it possible to utilize the community television network. I know that a lot of parents watch the school committee meetings, for instance. If there were some kind of presentation that could be made on the Bernston Northfield closed circuit TV station, I think some people, quite a few people might watch it. I don't know if there's an analogous thing in the Turner's Gill area, but that's something to explore, I think. And I agree, and that's why I asked a question about, do we know what % of the surveys were returned, that it did seem like a relatively small amount. And we have a lot of work to do if we want people to even be aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Alan and then Bill.
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Bill, you want to go first?
No.
Go ahead.
You want me to go first?
Sure, go ahead.
I agree with a lot of the comments, but I think it would also be possible to ask the selectmen of all the towns that started this process to put out information on if you have a community newsletter, for example, and that goes to every house in the town of Gill. It's only quarterly, but that's a way to get some information out. Secondly, on some of the comments, I agree it's a small sample. It's not representative. And it also seems to be diametrically opposed. Some of the opinions expressed. People, on the one hand, we have lots of accolades for the educational systems as they exist. And on the other hand, we have complaints, some of which obviously come from staff when they talk about, I'm not going to deal with people's wage scales. That's not part of this conversation. And any comment on that from either side, I'll disregard. But, I do think we need to advance our PR a lot, and every way we can do it. I think we have tried many ways, and now we need to create an assault, essentially, of information as to why this all began. And I recognize for one thing that this all really began from Gil Montague's superintendent in the past. So it's been a learning process for Pioneer to understand why they even got engaged in this in the first place. And we need to be sensitive to that too, that lack of information or lack of initiative to do it may not be due to anything other than lack of information. So that's what we got to get out.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Alan?
Well, Bill, you said some of the points that I was going to make more eloquently than I would probably say them. So I might reiterate them a little bit differently, but we're thinking, I think, somewhat alike here. I think there's some that have been somewhat informed, maybe visited the website, maybe read parts of the report, and shared their opinion based on some real information that we were able to glean. And if there was, it seemed like there's more of a disconnect with people that saw the survey and they're just, as Mike pointed out, they're just giving their opinion. They're reading a question, they really don't have any basis other than their gut feeling, or maybe what their kid said to them, or how they're feeling, or maybe they read an article in the paper or something. But so there seems to be a disconnect. And so I would backtrack and say that one of the maybe responsibilities that we would have going forward would be to share the feedback in the context that was very limited, but put it in the context of providing more ground information of what we actually did learn from the reports that we have, and try to do it in nuggets that could engage a conversation. Since I like the ideas about engaging the community and having either some of the hot topics, be talked about with people that have an interest and enjoy, meeting with 15, 16 people and just brainstorming and trying to talk through issues, because we could share what we know, and then they could kind of sort of frame how would you get through those challenges. So I feel we have an obligation to share the information we have and provide more background information. And people came up with some great ways. I love Karen's idea about, we have our own little TV show once in a while to share information. I think that's a great idea. We haven't taken advantage of drop boxes around town where people can, once we've had a big push for sharing information in a lot of different forums, that when they feel comfortable, they could take the survey in a much broader timeline. Going forward, if we do another RFQ, or we already did one, we would just have to put an RFQ out to have a facilitator assist, and putting the survey together, looking at engaging people, identifying some of the most frequent topics that people would like to talk more about, and use the students, use parents. I don't know, I kind of think that would be a natural next step that accomplish two things: sharing and getting more and delivering more background information. Because if we are going to, and by the way, we don't have a timeline, which was one of our problems. We said, as I think Lynn or somebody pointed out, here's a survey. You have like 3 weeks to do it and get it in. And we didn't really even give a lot of time for people to, hear things, process it, talk to each other about it, let it marinate, and then complete a survey or share information in other forums. So I'll just sort of step back and figure, you know, we should try to figure out what will our next steps, what do you think our next steps should be? Brian had a lot of great points in terms of engagement and sharing, and also the concern about limited size.
Hey, Alan, I just want to chime in really quickly. Dorinda put in the chat, so I'm speaking for her. She said, I think the schools would be fine with sending a flyer if they didn't have to print it, which we have the funds and we have the paper for that, so that's not a problem. And then they send home various flyers all the time. So that's another way of reaching out. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Mike, I saw you. Deb hasn't spoken yet, and Lynn also had her hand up, and I think I just saw another hand as well. And then Mike, is that all right if we come to, and Karen too? Okay, so Deb, you first, and then we'll go to Lynn, and then.
So I've been talking to people, and I've just been sort of shocked by people have been talking to me, but sense that this is a done deal, that this is just going to happen, which I don't know where they've gotten that idea. And I even I've had to push back and say, I'm actually on this committee. There's no done deal. You know, I can explain to you the process if you want to listen, but this is not something that you need to think is already made up. And this is probably from 5 different people in 5 different venues. So that's, I think maybe it's not for everybody. Maybe it's just the crowd that somehow I'm crossing. So there is something out there that's making people think that they don't have a choice or don't have a vote or play a role in this, which is unfortunate. And I think we do owe it to people to share the information that we collected, of course, making sure that it's very clear that it's not a representative whole. It's a very tiny fraction of motivated people, either motivated to really express their frustration with the school or their protection of their district, or whatever reason they might have filled out that survey. The other thought that I had too, I mean, I think Karen's idea is great. I think a looping, well done presentation, either done by whomever, either you, Mary, we'd have to pay you more, and maybe that's fine, of the results, and or an introduction by Greg or Alan about the process and how we got there, I think would be really helpful. That it would just be aired as often as Tyler and the folks at BNC TV air stuff. I think that would be so helpful for people to see that. And I think I really like the small group idea of having students, having a student forum, having just parents of current students in the district, having one that's geared specifically for educators in the districts. I think that would be a very smart thing to do, and have it be a short presentation and then lots of back and forth of sharing concerns, getting people thinking, sort of stimulating a conversation, and hopefully having questions recorded so that we can come back from those with shared information. So I think that would be really helpful, and really keeping it small, if possible, or at least specific demographics as opposed to a big group of different people. And I will say, as someone who's gone to many town meetings at the at the end of the year to vote on the school budget, or going to school committee meetings when they're talking about the budget, like when the reality hits the fan, people will go in 2 different ways. They will lobby hard for things that they love and they care about, and a lot of people also say, not doing this, and depending on who is in the room, feelings can go one way or another. But I do think the people who took the survey, the people who are imagining, oh, this would be so wonderful to have these different things, why can't the schools be better, don't always go to town hall meetings or they don't go to the school committee. Because if they did, they would have a deeper understanding of why we're here trying to do this. And it's unfortunate, right, that more people aren't engaged in the process. And so I think the onus is really on us to get as many people involved in the process of really understanding why we're here, we're doing this work. Whether it happens or not, I would want everyone to really have a deep understanding of how expensive it is to run these tiny little schools, and how limited these schools really are by the lack of money and actually lack of students to be able to field or support clubs, teams, classrooms. And I don't think everyone really gets that when they just, send their kid on a school bus or drive their kid and drop them off, and they're not engaged in all the rest of it. And I think what our job really is to try to educate as much as possible. So that's all I have to say. But I thought, Mary, I think you did a fantastic job. And I feel bad about the survey. I guess it was too long and the questions were a bit redundant. But I think our committee was trying really hard to capture feelings in different ways.
Right. Great. Thank you, Deb. I didn't mean that to be a criticism. I was just
No. I'm open to criticism. I just feel like, oh, okay, yeah, I get that. Especially when you see the results. They do seem redundant. Yeah. So sure, you're right.
Lynn, and then Mike, and then Karen.
Hi. I try to be brief. I think that Deb put a lot of things very, very well. But what I'm perceiving is there's a very distinct lack of engagement. And that's why people are, shall we say, I don't know if this is the best word to use, ignorant. Because I think that when I went to the forum in Montague, there was only 1 or 2 people there other than some town staff. And in many ways, it was, the way he put it was revealing to me in that it's not so, it's a financial issue, yes, but it's also a sustainability issue of, as we were saying, just being able to have the classes for the kids to attend. And so how do we get people to engage? I think you put forward a lot of ideas, but just getting people to understand that there is a problem, that we came here and we're doing this because there is it's a big problem.
Yeah. Thank you, Lynn. Mike?
Yeah, well, I would echo that in the sense that we're sitting here saying that we think there's a big problem, and yet, as I said earlier, the people who responded to the survey, large majority said things are basically fine. So maybe they just don't realize how bad things are. We're sitting here talking about next steps and having more engagement, all of which sounds fine to me, but I'm thinking that what we've already done has brought some questions forward, many of which we already knew were questions that would need to be addressed. And I hope that at some point we'll talk more specifically about what those questions are and how we're going to come up with answers to them. And I think a major one is a question of how a merged Gilmontague and Pioneer district would be able realistically, whatever we decide that means, to improve the educational offerings. Greg said earlier that right now neither district all by itself is able to do what it needs to do. I'm paraphrasing here. I sort of sense an implicit assumption that if the two districts merged, they would be able to do what needs to be done. And I'm not sure that's been demonstrated. We've noted in the past that a merged district, merging these two districts is still going to create a relatively small district. And so how much, a good example in my mind is people say, well, it'd be nice to have more course flexibility. So instead of only offering a course at one time, and the student who wants to take that course has to do something else at that time, so they can't take it. Well, if we merge the two districts, is that problem going to go away? I don't think it's going to go away completely, because I don't think the district's going to be big enough to offer multiple courses at multiple times so that people can do it. My granddaughter goes to Greenfield High School, which is a lot bigger than this merged district, and they have a number of offerings, and yet she is having to choose because there's only so many hours in the day, and a lot of stuff, there's a certain amount of that day is taken up with stuff that everybody has to do. So there's a relatively small part of the day that's open for people to choose what they want to do. And she's interested in a number of things, and she isn't doing all of them because she can't. She picks the ones that she wants to do, and she isn't doing the ones that she isn't able to fit into her schedule. So I think that's going to be a reality, even if we merge districts. And I want to be careful about leading the public on to think, oh, if we merge districts, then the people who want more world languages are going to get more world languages. And the people who want JV sports teams are going to get JV sports teams. Mm-hmm. And the people who want more AP courses are going to get more AP courses. Some of those things might happen, but we need to do some serious thinking about, well, what realistically might actually happen, what could happen. And more can happen if we want to spend more money. How much more money? What's it going to look like? Because that's going to be a question. And that financial tool can help us come up with answers. And I think we can come up with answers using that tool to help us. But we also need data. We need to understand, well, if we add these programs, we add these courses, what's a typical schedule going to look like? What's the staffing need to be? And let's come up with some costs for what that's all going to be, and what does the budget look like? And maybe that's where sitting down with focus groups of educators to say, what do you think could really, what would you like to do? What could really be done? Let's come up with some actual scenarios here, could be useful. But I think something like, we have to come up with answers to those questions at some point. And I think the longer we go out to the public and say, gee, the two districts together, each one separately is too small to be able to have a lot of offerings. But if we merged, there's a whole bunch of things we might be able to do, and then present them with a list. A lot of people are going to say, yeah, that sounds great. I would say, yeah, that sounds great. But I think realistically, not all of it is going to happen. And I think we need to be clear about that sooner rather than later, to say, here's what actually, could happen. Here's various scenarios. We could, do this or that. Here's the implications of doing either one. This is the type of thing we could do. We don't obviously have to come up with what the district would look like. I think Deb Portilla said in the past, it's going to depend on what the kids want to take. But I think right now we just have a kind of vague, oh yeah, we could do more. And people say, great, yeah, I'd like to do more. Here's what I'd like to do. I mean, the list that Mary came up with, what people would like to do, it's a pretty long list.
You're absolutely right, Mike. I think what people are looking for is what would make me really excited about going to that new district. And if you don't have that compelling vision, then everything else is just spinning. You need to know where you're trying to go and kind of if you can lock that in.
The longer you have people saying, if we have a new district, you know, my kid will be able to take Chinese, and another kid saying, if we have a new district, my kid will be able to play lacrosse, you know, it's not going to work because somebody's going to be disappointed.
Karen?
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just wanted to make a comment on the idea of flyers. Right now, on the policy subcommittee of Pioneer, we're talking about really limiting that because right now the decision comes down to an administrator. Do I allow this group? Do I not allow that group to send out their flyers? So it seems like we're leaning toward a stricter definition of what can go home as a flyer from an outside entity. So I just wanted people to be aware that that's going on in our school committee now. And by the way, I went to a high school of 2,300 in grades 10 through 12. I wanted to take the third year of a language and the first year of another, and I could not do it because of the schedule.
Thank you, Karen. Greg?
Yeah, I'll just, you know, address Mike's concern on this, and that is, just speaking from as a teacher that's worked in a school for the last 16 years, that's gone from, you know, even just 160 down to, let's say, 120. It's not even a question that the programs will get better. It's not even a question that there'll be more offerings. I just know it's partly due to how the schedules work and it's going to only get worse with these, because we're talking about high schools right now. We're talking about middle schools and high schools, right? We're not talking about the elementary schools right now because that's not in the mix here. But when you start getting a high school that's dropping below 200 and then continues to fall, that is going to get worse and worse and worse. It's going to, the amount of you won't be able to have your theater programs. You're not going to be able to have your, you know, your band, like what you're seeing sometimes in Gilmontague, where you have six kids in the band. It's just, you don't have, and what's going to happen is it's going to put all this pressure on a small group of kids that are like the good kids that can do a lot of things. And those kids are going to feel really overwhelmed because they're going to be tapped for all sorts of things, trying to keep the programs together. I know this because I'm living it. I've been living it for 15 years. And it's really tough when you start to get below 200 and you start to see your enrollment start dropping like that, right? Our teams have gone away. We've lost our JV teams. We don't do lacrosse anymore. We don't do field hockey anymore. We don't do a lot of things because it's just, you don't have the economies of scale. You double the size of that and you're going to all of a sudden have teams again. And it's not a question of costing more, right? You still can have one band teacher, whether it's 6 people or 50 people. So the point is that that's not even a question. The programs will improve. But I do think, to your point, we need to have a realistic set of offerings to show the public. And that can be done through either curriculum coordinators or a dean of academics, if they have one, that does the scheduling to show you where, when you start to get low in your enrollment, where the constraints happen, because they start to happen really significantly when you start dropping below, 200, 180. And you really begin to feel the pressures, and the students feel it. And that's what I don't think is being talked about, is that the students, you're going to find, right, out of 180 students at the high school level, right, there's going to be that pool of 50 kids that, are like the top kids, and they do a lot of things, and they're going to feel extremely overwhelmed because you don't have the support there to field, the programs in a way where you can spread that out. So I'm only speaking from experience, and Brian, I'm sure can chime in on this. He's got his hand up, so
Yes, he has. Brian.
Sorry, I have it up just for a slightly different reason. As as I'm listening to the conversation, I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by the potential and opportunity. And I'm fascinated, again, I go back to the leverage that we have with the state. And, you know, they have a vested interest in us doing something. And then ultimately the decision comes down to the various communities. So again, I go back to, if we can identify some of those barriers that we could potentially enlist the state's response in removing for some period of time, that might placate some of the primary concerns, and then we get down to the educational opportunities. One of the things that I just wanted to throw out as a question, if I served on the Commission for Public Secondary Schools at NEASC and chaired 12 accreditation teams during that time period, and got a chance to go all over New England and see various schools. While I didn't have the opportunity to see these types of schools, I did have schools in my caseload on the commission who had gone through regionalization in the state of Maine. And they worked with NEASC, you know, to sort of recenter their values. And I'd be happy to consult with NEASC to see if they could identify any schools who went through that, any districts and who combined really successfully. And perhaps there might be a contingent of people from this committee who might be willing to make a trip, do an overnight, and spend a couple days in that district and ask them how they did it. Just so we can gather some more information rather than trying to recreate the wheel.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to throw that out there as a consideration. I'd be happy to consult with the director if folks are interested in having an opportunity like that.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So Maine's was a mandatory consolidation, and Vermont did the same thing. And I don't think overall either of them was viewed as a successful process, but it'd be interesting to know where there were successes. I just want to make sure there are no other hands up before we go back to Mike. Well, Bill, Bill and then Mike. Sorry,
Yeah,
Mike.
I have to go before Mike because I'm answering what he said. On the educational part and people's expectations and that sort of thing, I don't think that there's been any concrete information, certainly not put out by the education subcommittee, that detail that there would be two ways of looking at a curriculum. One, you have horizontal, where you have multiple of the same thing, and then vertical, where you're going from normal to honors to advanced placement. And we have talked about enhancing the curriculum by offering that verticality, not a horizontal thing. So that's an exaggeration of anything that's been talked about. Secondly, it is interesting that the first thing that a lot of people consider when discussing this regionalization is, where's the money and how much money do you have, and is that too much money? You need to get less money and be more efficient. So I think talking about the stresses on the educational system as it exists today, as Greg is trying to focus on a little bit, it's not only the students, it's the whole system that is suffering, or may suffer, I should say. And I agree that there can be successes in small groups, but it can't be, as Greg said, it can't be argued that you can get more with less. Even in a private school setting, that's not going to happen, even if the cost goes up, and the costs there certainly are way above what we do. But that's a digression, I'm sorry. And with that, I'll let Michael go.
Thanks, Bill.
Well, I believe that the education subcommittee has not talked about horizontal advantages, but they have been mentioned. I heard them mentioned at least one of the forums as a possible benefit of merger. So the idea has been put out there, and that just underscores my point that I think we as a board would do well to be more clear about what we are actually talking about when we talk about the benefits of regionalization. Mm-hmm. And responding to Greg, Greg, I mean, you know, I'm with you, man. I understand that a smaller districts getting smaller is not a good thing. The problems compound themselves. Being bigger is better than being smaller. The question is being as much bigger. To me, I think the question is, will Gilmontague and Pioneer merging produce a district which is big enough that it actually is sustainable?
Yeah.
Or will it simply produce a bigger district that is still going down the tubes? And that's where I think Brian's point about, you know, getting the state involved with incentives sounds interesting to me. I would like to know, though, Brian says the state has a vested interest in seeing this merger happen. I'd like to know what the state thinks that vested interest is, because the way I see it, the state has a vested interest in districts being financially and educationally sustainable so that they don't have to worry about them. And if we go to the state and say, we're going to merge, but you know, it's going to be really hard for us and we have a bunch of challenges, and since you want this to happen, you've got to give us a whole bunch more money or a whole bunch of support in some way. I'm not sure how good a deal that's going to appear to the state, because what they want to hear is the opposite. They want to hear that they don't have to give us more money and they don't have to offer us any other incentives because we're finally together and we're doing it on our own. And I do agree that money shouldn't be the only, you know, I don't want to be misunderstood. And I hope I didn't come across as saying that I think that the reason to do this is to save money, but clearly everything has a cost. And these districts could improve right now today if they were able to double their budgets and hire a bunch of more people to be able to offer more programs.
Right.
And, you know, obviously that's financially unrealistic. So the finances do have to come into play at some point. And that's where our original vision on the FTF subcommittee, where, you know, just getting an idea of what sort of extra room we'd have in the existing budgets if we were to merge, what would our extra capacity be? Would we be able to offer one more course, two more courses, five more courses? We thought that'd be an interesting question to know the answer to. We never found out the answer to that question. We don't right now have the information to answer that question. And I still think it's a good question.
Alan, wrap it up.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a good question. And those are the kind of questions that I think can be behind going back out and engaging the community around that. We have, you know, two smaller districts. I don't know, everybody probably on Gilmontague knows what their budget is. Pioneers is around what, 14, 15 million. You know, when we look at economy of scale, you know, what let's just say, and we don't know the impact of the health and what the new salary, although we've played with that. You know, if you have $36 million in a new district, that, you know, the high school is double, and you know what you're doing with your middle school, what might you be able to do with you know, with basically a lot more money than the individual districts have right now? Maybe we could figure out in that context what kind of opportunities we could have that kids want. So we're going to have to, I try to keep meetings no more than 2 hours. We started at 6:30, 7:30. I just heard a bong behind me. So what is it? It's 8 going on 8:40. I want to try to get a sense to, we don't have to do number 8 because that was for informational purposes of how the grant was written and what we were looking to do. And I think that we've accomplished that. That was the RFQ that Mary had done. Mary has also done a mock brochure of the findings, which we don't have time to show right now. And Mary, you haven't had an opportunity to send that out just to get people's thoughts about what. Oh, you did, great. So so I don't know if people had a chance, take a look at that, but we've been awarded the grant money to continue something with a facilitator to be able to work through March, April, May, June. So we have a much longer timeline. And maybe we should be having a conversation of what do we want to, what do we want to have the focus be?
And maybe
I'd like to get an RFQ out. Go ahead.
Should I leave at this point? You think it probably makes sense for me to let you have that conversation?
Sure. Sure. It's not going to be a very long one, but yeah, you can, since you might be an applement.
Let me just say how much I have enjoyed working with all of you. This kind of concludes my work on this project, but thank you and all the best to you. I know how much your hearts are in doing the right thing for the kids of the district. So all the best. So thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. So I don't know whether it might make sense to have the two subcommittees have a kind of a quick meeting and talk about what, like the education subcommittee, what would be the core questions and what kind of engagement they would like to see for brainstorming. And if, the finance committee were to say, here's the next thing we need to wrap a better understanding around to present, and maybe not pick off too much more than we can chew right now, because we have a small amount of time. If we put an RFQ out to hire a facilitator to continue, we could write it vague enough to be, engaging the community and sharing the feedback, and just write it broad enough that we then could refine it to have the facilitator do what we would like to. Someone is talking and they're not on mute.
Oh, it's okay.
Oh, Jane, there we go. So what are your thoughts about, or we could do that as a full board. I kind of think it'd be more productive to just do it as two and coming back and sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Did Bill, would you be willing to pull a group together and talk about what maybe engagement might look like and what we'd like a facilitator to do to begin this? I think we still are in the infancy stages, even though we've been doing this for several years now. And there clearly is a need to educate parents and community about what we've been doing, what we found, and how much more we need to really hear from them once we can get them some more detail to the information.
Yeah, so we can try to set up a meeting and see where we go.
All right.
I think that it would be helpful for people to verse up a little bit on what the current curriculum is, if they can do that. Because I think that kind of specificity is what Michael is focused on, and it sounds reasonable. But I certainly don't expect that we're in a position to make an actual curriculum plan. And I wouldn't intend to do that. That's, many of these issues that people are saying, what if, or what's going to happen, or what are you doing? I don't think any of that is going to be defined truly until you have a new administration established, and that's their job. And it's a couple of years of development, even from the time I think, from the time you may decide to regionalize, there's going to be a year before you actually, at least before you actually get together and do it. So, yeah. And And in that process, those people will be the ones actually mapping out what the offerings are. But nonetheless, we can make a stab at it and define the parameters within which we're thinking. And I think that'll answer some of the ambiguity.
Yeah, let me just comment.
Can I just respond something quickly?
Wait a minute. Let me just, I want to clear one thing up though, Mike. Let me just, to address that. I'm not thinking, Bill, that, and you know, you're sharing it, so you can lay it out the way you want. I was thinking you'd be talking more about a process of what you'd like to see. For example, and I'm just making this up, you would like to see educators, I'm making it up, from both communities, maybe in the science department, in both districts, get together and talk about, you know, what do they have and what would they like to have, so that we're getting that engagement. So your task would sort of be, you know, around how that would happen and who are the groups and what information you'd hope would come out of that, because it would be really hard for you guys to come together and say, well, what do we want for a curriculum, or what are the parameters? Same thing around students. You know, if you might frame something around the how there. So just give that some thought. And
you want to go right into.
I'd rather.
You want to go right into the peer group conferences, which is great. Maybe just put it on your docket to talk about. How do we get that information so the education subcommittee is not, maybe you're a part of that, but you're creating opportunities to have the groups give you real information on what they would like to see, because the consultants didn't do that, as Mike was pointing out earlier. Mike?
Yeah, I just to follow up on what Bill just said. I mean, I don't disagree with you on that approach, but it does raise a question in my mind: is what you're saying that the basic position of this board going forward is going to be that merging the two districts will make things better for all the reasons that basically Greg outlined, that having more kids just makes things better, and that we really don't know anything more specific than that. That will all be figured out once there is a new district by the people who are managing that new district. I mean, if that's the position of the board, then I'm fine with it. It takes a number of things off of the FTF subcommittee plate, I think, because there's no point in our even considering trying to run different scenarios based on information that we're not going to have. So I just like to, I mean, I'm not asking to get a decision right now, but you know, at some point, I think we ought to come down on either that's basically going to be the position of the board going forward, or we are, you know, no, we're going to try to come up with something a little more specific and try to attach numbers to it, in which case the FTF subcommittee, that's going to be our job. So that's.
Yep. So Bill, I was coming right down the middle on that. I was basically saying, I don't know, I'm between Mike and you. I'm thinking that you would actually be engaging people to get the specifics on how those opportunities for kids in science, in math, or whatever, you know, that they really wish they could do, but they're, you know, they have limitations. If they had, you know, more opportunities, so that so we come up with some real things that are coming from educators, and not waiting to, well, we can do more, we don't know what the more is. Greg?
I mean, there are things we can do. There are things we can do, to Mike's point. I mean, one thing that we haven't talked about at all is it's not about necessarily offering more, right? For instance, you could actually think about what UMass does in terms of, they do a multi-bands, you know, like a multi-pops concert, right? I mean, one of the things you can do is you can actually get the two districts to, for instance, bring the band kids over to
and have them combine and play together, and realize, give them a taste of what it's like to play in a bigger group. I mean, things like that, getting kids together from both schools to participate in a particular class that may be incredibly under-enrolled. I mean, you have classes that can't run often because you don't even have enough students. And there's lots of ways to be able to combine students together from the different districts to give them a taste of what, not even necessarily offering more, but just what it's going to feel like when you actually have more students. And let's say, I keep using the band example because that's my field. We're down on enrollment. I got 8 people in the band, right? I usually have 20. And people 8 in the band is not a band. And so you all of a sudden double the size of that. And now you've got all the parts taken care of. And all of a sudden the kids' eyes, lighten up because they're like, oh my gosh, this is what it's supposed to sound like, or this is what our football team's supposed to look like. Or this is, that's, and they don't even know it because they're just so immersed in their own school. They have no idea what's going on in the other school or what things could potentially look like. If you give them a little bit of a taste of it, you might actually find that they get really excited about something like that. So if they don't know what they don't know, it's hard to put it on paper and say, well, this is what might happen. You could give them an experience of it.
Okay, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. Karen?
Yeah, I just think before we start having groups of specific teachers getting together or groups of students going to participate with other students, if it's under our umbrella, we have to lay the groundwork. We have to educate the public better before we start doing these things that look like we're moving a certain direction. Because as far as I know, we haven't made a decision as a board, and we may cause some people to be confused or misdirected as far as what we're doing. So we really, I think the education committee might want to focus on educating, how we get the word out to people rather than what the education is going to possibly look like if and when there is a merge. Sorry.
Yep. So I'm going to step back because I believe in, you have good people and you have competent people and you put them in a room and talk it through. And Bill and and Deb, that team has been really good. So go at it and see what you come up with. I'll try to, I'd like to, as ex officio, I like to send on subcommittees and just listen. And so why don't you schedule one? Mike, why don't you get your think tank group together, get a chair, and maybe someone will offer, and just have a think tank discussion. We did get the grant. It's not a lot of money. It was like 36,000 or something like that, Craig, 37,000. So it's very limited, but it would give us somebody that could do some of the legwork for us when you came up with some ideas of what you think should be done. At the least, we need to fill our obligation of we've said in every facility that we would share the information of what we learned. And as long as we do that and we do it in the context of very limited and we think here are some of the flaws on how the information came about, it's still real. Perception is reality for folks. And we need to share that we did hear what they said and we'd like to give them more information. So that said, when should we get together as a full committee? I don't know if people had their calendars. This is a very, very busy time of year with so many things going on and so many subcommittees going on. I jumped out for a minute to March and wondered if like March 9th or March 3rd to just get together so that if we move something forward with a facilitator, they can get started for April, May, and June. And so at least they'd be able to do some things and give them 3 months to do that, because we have to put an RFP back out and then see who responds. So can the week of the 7th, a day work for
Are we
most
talking
folks?
about Tuesdays now or Wednesdays?
I just put it could be a Tuesday. I looked at the calendar and said, okay, I know Penny had a meeting on the 10th. I know there's a select board meeting on the 7th. I know there's different subcommittees going on. I don't know, is Tuesday better
March
for
9th
folks?
is a Wednesday, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Tuesday better for me.
Yes.
Are we talking? We were talking March 8th. Is that what you say?
Yeah.
March 9th is the oh yeah, March 8th is Tuesday.
Yeah, I personally will be. I won't be in town for the week between like March 7th and possibly all the way to the 16th or 17th.
Does Gil Montague, are they the second and fourth Tuesdays?
Yes, they are.
So that's March 8th.
Right. I can't make that.
I can't
How about
either.
the week of the 14th?
That
Yeah.
Tuesday is open.
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah.
I would say
All
just
right, that's the 15th.
do it without me
Okay.
if I'm not here. So
Yeah, the 15th would work for me.
All right, let's try the 15th.
When is school
Is
vacation?
6:30 okay for folks? That's February 21st. The week of February 21st.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, we'll say March 15th. It's 6:30 work for folks.
Yes.
And then Mike and Bill, do what you can. You might be able to have two mini, meaning MINI, meeting to get some thoughts, and then we'll bring that all together and try to get together a plan to go forward. And I'll put out the RFP and make it very general so it will fit whatever you come up with, but it will be to share and facilitate more engagement and sharing of information or something vague, but we can make it specific.
I just want
to
I just want to request, is Deb Potee still here? If she'd send me the email list of our members on our committee.
Yeah, she left just a few minutes.
All right.
Greg can do that. Greg, can you send that off to Bill, members of the education subcommittee? Okay, so he has a group form. That'd be great. The dialogue today was beautiful. I want to thank you, Brian, for joining us. And I know you got a crazy schedule, and it's just, I really appreciate you sharing. And people, feel free to send me emails, your different thoughts that you have after you have a chance to let this marinate. And if you have any epiphanies, share them, and I'll note them and share them back to the full group. We think it's all set to everyone comfortable with adjourning?
Yeah.
Or anyone have anything else to say? All right, a motion?
I'll move.
Move to adjourn.
Second it.
All right, perfect. Put whoever you want. I will, let's see. Mike, yes or no? Mike?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Bill? Pat, you're on mute. Christy? Pat said yes. Christy, yes. Jane?
Yes.
Marilyn? Greg?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Rena?
Yes.
Renee?
Yes.
And Jennifer, I'm not going to leave you out. I hope you're in agreement to
Thank
leave.
you. Yes.
And yes.
All right. Yeah. Enjoy your evening. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
It's been nice seeing you
Bye.
all.
Bye-bye.
Be safe. Bye.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mhm.